Star Wars Rebels Episode 8, Path of the Jedi. I think this was an amazing episode to come back from, I think our 2 month break of the series. I didn't know the last episode was going to be the mid season finale because for whatever reason, Disney really didn't say, hey, it's the mid season finale. It was an amazing episode. I think everyone kind of just loved the fact that we got to see Ezra kind of tap into the dark side because of the fear he was feeling in that episode. And this one was kind of the amazing spiritual side of things, and the last one was the amazing action episode where we got to see the Force used in an action oriented way. And this one was our spiritual side of the Force where we got to see Ezra go through a really, really big step in his training, and by the end officially get his own lightsaber, which was really cool. I think the one thing I wish we could have seen with that is, Ezra actually building the lightsaber himself. And he isn't exactly, trained in the ways of the Force where we'd get to see it in ways that it's been represented before, which is typically speaking, is a person kind of sitting in there basically using the Force to build the lightsaber, and we see all the components spread out in front of them and they sort of just sink in together and it forms a lightsaber. So I wouldn't have expected that to happen with his character, but I still would have loved to have seen him work on it, even if it was in a way where if we as humans tried to build a real lightsaber, it would be the same thing. We'd just be using wrenches and screwdrivers and stuff. I still would have loved to have seen that, but it was an amazing episode. It was really great to see Ezra go through this really huge step, and Kanan had to really recognize he tapped into a darker side of the Force that he doesn't really want him to tap into. So he has to help him learn the ways of the Force in the same manner that he learned. And it was really cool. And I think one of my favorite scenes is when Ezra first went through the door and it was closing. And he asked Kanan, what am I looking for? And Kanan was like, everything and nothing. And he's like, it doesn't really help. And then he's like, I know. And once the door closes, he had this moment that I really enjoyed because it seemed kind of sad, but at the same time it was just sort of a way for him to pass on what he learned. But it was just I know that's just what that's what my mentor taught me. And it was kind of a sad moment, he was kind of reflecting on the past of someone that he lost and he knows is gone forever, but at the same time he's trying to channel that same person and be a great mentor and be a great master to his apprentice. So I really enjoyed that because it probably wasn't even meant to remotely be sad, but it kind of made me sad a little. Oh, you could kind of tell in the way he's saying it, he's unsure in so many different ways. In one way it's sad because it's someone he lost, in another way he's unsure because he's not exactly meant to be a master to this new apprentice, and there are just a lot of components to it. And I really enjoyed that. But Ezra going through the different stages and seeing the Inquisitor and seeing Kanan and having this hallucination where his biggest fear really is losing his master and then facing up against someone who he knows is powerful in the Force but is the bad guy. So that was really cool. I enjoyed seeing that and kind of feeling he doesn't actually fit in with the crew and stuff like that. I thought was actually pretty cool as well. And overall, I thought it was just a really great episode. We even got a tiny cameo by Yoda, which initially really threw me off, and then because I was like, that doesn't sound like Yoda at all. And when he was talking to Ezra, it really didn't to me, but when he started to talk to Kanan, that's when it really sinked in. It was the the Yoda from the original trilogy where he has those sort of old Yoda grunt noises, and he's and stuff like that. And it was just really cool. It's oh, that's why it's such a weird transition. It was going from this Yoda that we've known for such a long time now, almost a decade, I believe, or over a decade really, since the Phantom Menace. We've had the younger Yoda, and that going all the way up until really only maybe a year and a half ago, when we still had the Clone Wars on Cartoon Network. We still had the really young Yoda where he didn't have the noises, and he didn't make the same sounds, and he didn't talk the same way because it was, of course, a different person and stuff. So we had the younger Yoda for so long. When it transitioned back in this episode to what Yoda originally sounded like in the original movies, it took me a bit, like, especially when, like I said, when he's talking to Ezra, it really did not sound like him at all to me, and it just sounded completely different even when it went to the next scene with Kanan. But in the scene with Kanan, it was like, this is, it kind of just takes you back to the original trilogy, and, you know, that's kind of what this show does in general with the music and everything, so that was definitely really cool. I really love that scene. Of course, Ezra getting his own crystal was unbelievable. I was hoping we'd get to see him make it also when he was actually inside. I was hoping he'd like just randomly find parts and stuff like that. But, you know, he got the crystal and that was really cool. And even Kanan was surprised, like, holy crap, I didn't think you'd, you know, find your own crystal. And when he was making it, I was of course hoping, and this is just because I love the double-sided lightsaber, I was hoping that he would somehow make one of those and, I don't know, use the Force to kind of learn it his own way or something like that, I don't know. And I mostly thought that because everyone kind of mentioned how they were like giving him different parts here and there. I'm like, it sounds like he got so much stuff he could make a double-sided lightsaber. But either way, I'm excited. The design itself I thought was pretty interesting. It kind of has a guard, but I know like any other lightsaber could just, you know, chop right through the little hand guard he has. But it does look interesting. I was, you know, like I said, I was hoping for like a double-sided lightsaber. That was like way too much to hope for. But I do enjoy it. I think it looks pretty cool. It's very unique. It's, you know, something we haven't had. It has a handguard, but at the same time, it's like a cube type of design, and it's really simplistic and it's sort of out there, but it's the style that he wanted to make it as. It's something that he feels he's, you know, familiar with. So I thought that was actually pretty cool, and it could also come in handy in multiple, you know, ways. Like he could actually use the, you know, I guess the sort of handguard, you know, design of it as a handle if he wanted to kind of flip it upside down and didn't want to have his hand in between. He could have it where his, you know, his hand's basically further away from the hilt itself. So there are a lot of different things they can kind of play around with that design, and who knows, they could have it where it comes apart and he does other stuff with the lightsaber as well. But I think the design is very interesting. It was pretty cool. Just two cool blue lightsabers. So blue is my favorite color, so I always love the blue lightsabers more than anything anyway. Except unless maybe he got like the I think it's called like Edgian silver. I can't remember the exact name of it, but unless he got like the cool silver lightsaber or the silver crystal or maybe even the black crystal, that's like the only way it could possibly look a little bit cooler than the regular blue. But definitely love this episode. I think it was a very great, you know, like it's almost a polar opposite, but at the same time it's a great complement to the last episode, as I mentioned, with the Force being used kind of physically in the last episode, and in this one it was sheer spiritual Force and learning the Force and understanding it and adapting to it in, you know, a new unique way. So I really love the episode. I'm excited for the next one. I think it's really just going to focus on Chopper, so I'm not like incredibly excited for it, but it's Star Wars Rebels. I do love the show. You know, really only like 8 episodes in or 9 depending on how you look at it. I mean, they really mess it up. Like they don't count the little 1-hour movie as one episode, so the stuff is all over the place. So for me, it's episode 8, even though on my, you know, cable it says it's episode 9. If you look it up, it might say episode 8 or 9. Who knows? But either way, this is a really great episode. I am excited for what they're going to be doing with the rest of the series. I hope we do get a lot more of these sort of spiritual episodes. I really love that whenever they do it, no matter if it's in an animated series or if it's in one of the movies. The spiritual stuff is always really fun to see and experience because it's always through the eyes of the new young Jedi, like the new apprentice going through and figuring out this next level of the Force or this next level of adapting to the Force. So it's always really fun to watch that and learn whatever little bit of history that we can, or even if we don't, which admittedly we don't tend to learn that much history. We always tend to just get a new apprentice kind of going through and learning their lesson. It's still really fun to see that, so I hope we get more of that. At one point in this episode, when they had basically the Inquisitor kind of say like he was actually real and wasn't a hallucination, I was thinking maybe he did really sense a disturbance and he was using the Force to try to mess with Ezra. And I was thinking like he can't possibly be that good in the Force, and I guess fortunately he isn't that good to actually project himself to Ezra within the temple, so I guess that was a good thing. But it really had me curious. Like, maybe there are people out there, and I'm sure there are other, of course, it's Star Wars, so there's always someone incredibly powerful who could do all sorts of things that people were unaware of. So it just made me think, like, what if the Inquisitor was that powerful, where he truly sensed, like, they have kind of gone to a place that's really in conjunction with the Force, and so he kind of tapped into that as well, in his own evil way to try to mess with Ezra and Kanan, mostly Ezra, of course. But it was something that just popped into my head, and then of course it kind of went away like maybe 5 minutes after that, because Ezra, of course, realized it was a hallucination. But it doesn't matter, I guess. It was just something that popped into my head, something I thought was a pretty cool concept. They may or may not get back into. I highly doubt they will, but I would love it if they did. Either way, this was a great episode. I'm excited to see Ezra get into his actual lightsaber training. I'm also curious as to what his style may be, because of course we've seen pretty much everyone that you see in Star Wars uses it the regular style. We've had maybe 2 people ever really do the sort of upside down style. I don't know the actual name of that style. I know it has its own name, but we had Ahsoka in the Clone Wars, and she was super awesome with it. She even did it with 2 lightsabers, which was even more epic. But maybe we'll get to see Ezra kind of work his way, and maybe he'll end up using both or something like that. Who knows? But I'm definitely excited. Didn't expect him to get his own lightsaber in this episode. Really cool to see him have that. So we're going to get to see them do like physical combat training, which would be pretty cool. And then they can kind of mix in the other Jedi stuff in with that. So great episode. Of course, I want to know what you guys thought about it. So comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And I think the biggest thing here is, what do you guys think about Ezra really tapping into the Force in this episode? Did you enjoy the representation of the test? Did you think that they could have done it in a better way? Like I said, I do wish we got to see him build the lightsaber, even if it was just regular, like, mechanic style. It would have been cool to see that, because really the only experience we do get of people building lightsabers, the only one I can remember at least, has really only been in the Clone Wars. Both the 3D version and the 2D version, we got to see people who were well versed in the Force kind of take their lightsabers apart and then put them back together. And that was either, I think I saw it once with Anakin, and he was simply training and trying to figure something out mentally, and he was kind of just taking his lightsaber apart slowly, and he put it back together. And in the 2D version, it was like a random master and random apprentice, and they were inside of a cave, and the apprentice was putting her lightsaber back together. So it would have actually been pretty cool to see Ezra do it, where it's like he can't just, float all the pieces together. So that's really like my one big thing that I wish we got to see truly represented, because it would be a more realistic take, I guess, on building a lightsaber. So that's really it for me. But of course, like I said, I want to know what you guys think. So please comment below, let me know. And thanks for watching.